This is Radio Free Hillsdale, 101.7 FM. I'm Scott Bertram, and with me today is State Senator Mike Shirkey. Senator, how are you?
I'm doing great, Scott. Merry Christmas to you and everybody and your family, and I'm hoping you're healthy and looking forward to a little break.
Yes, and a Merry Christmas to you. This is our last conversation before the holiday. And it's a very, very busy time of the year, as we discussed off air, but we've got Christmas coming up, and it's going to be, I think, a strong finish to 2018, so feeling good. You can find the Senator online, senatormikeshirkey.com, serving Michigan's 16th State Senate District. That, of course, is Branch, Hillsdale, and Jackson counties. Work is not slowing down for lawmakers in Lansing. We have a lot of things to try to touch on today in our brief time, Senator. I wanted to start with one in which we have some final action, and that is Governor Snyder signing the bill to change the minimum wage and employer sick time law that the legislator had acted on in advance of it going on the ballot this past November. What changes were made? How does this adjust what the initial provision sort of outlined?
So the minimum wage law, the primary change there was to reenact the tipped wage scheme that Michigan's had for a number of decades now. Mm-hmm. Every server that I know in every restaurant that I frequent begged me to make sure that we didn't get rid of the tipped wage scheme in Michigan because they didn't want to make less money. And so that was the biggest change he made in that. We also adjusted it a bit so that the actual $12 an hour doesn't actually become law for another 10 or 11 years. Mm-hmm. But that's actually a moot point, too. I mean, I was at my wife and I were at Walmart yesterday in Hillsdale, and they had a sign up that, starting wages there are north of $11 an hour. So
Yep.
It is a non-issue, really. This was yet another ballot initiative funded by outstate resources, and I believe we addressed the intent of the legislation and adjusted it to make it more friendly for not just businesses but also for workers. On the paid sick leave time, then here again we made two what I consider to be important changes. One is that we only had it apply to those businesses that had 50 or more employees. It would have been a crushing record-keeping process for small businesses, and so we made sure that didn't happen. And then the other change we made was that if you have a vacation policy in place, a paid time off policy in place, and allow your employees to use it in small increments for unscheduled events like getting sick, then you are deemed and assumed compliant with the law. So those are the major changes in those two. I think we maintained the intent of the language, but made them so that they wouldn't be such a dramatic negative drag on businesses in Michigan.
And quickly, Senator, there are people who are critical. Well, there are people who are critical of you no matter what, but critical of this move in particular. But this is exactly the way that this process is supposed to play out, or is allowed to play out. Lawmakers have been elected by citizens across Michigan to act in the best interests of the state. There's an initiative. You guys took action and now have the ability to adjust. This is the way things go.
So it's a great question, Scott, because even when we do enact legislatively initiated laws, we often have to go back and amend them and afterwards because there's an oversight or there's a correction that needs to take place, and that is exactly what we're expected to do. So this is very consistent with the Constitution, and I'm very comfortable in the position we're in, and I think we met the spirit and intent of both without putting a dramatic drag on our economy in Michigan.
State Senator Mike Shirkey with us here, Radio Free Hillsdale, 101.7 FM. As you mentioned, the minimum wage and the sick leave was a potential vote. It started as a voter initiative, a citizens initiative. There's also a measure in Lansing being worked on now that would change some of the requirements as to how those signatures for initiatives are gathered. What are some of those potential changes?
Well, what we've discovered over the last few years, and this is not just in Michigan, but in other states that have citizen initiatives in their constitutions, is that people from outside the states, people that want to affect the social fabric of our nation, and people who are rather successful and measure their pocket change in millions, are come into a state and pay solicitors to collect signatures and to put initiatives on the ballot. So what we've done is, and it's been approved in the House, and now it's coming to the Senate this week, and I expect it to get approved and sent to the governor, is that we required it so that no congressional district's signatures exceeded more than 15% of the total signatures required for ballot initiatives. And the purpose of that is just to make sure that if people want to maintain that a citizen initiative represents the will of all the people in Michigan, well, then we're going to make sure that at least most of the people in Michigan have had a chance to sign the citizen initiative.
And that's, this is part of the process, too. If I recall correctly, the original language had 10%. The most could come from 10% in one district, so now it's 15%. Now, you do the math, and there's 14 congressional districts, so that still means you have to go across the state. You have to get some broad-based support for whatever initiative you're putting forward.
Exactly. And I don't see how this could be challenged in any court. This is definitely within the prerogative of the legislature. And I think it is a fairness issue that frankly, is way overdue. So this is one that's easy for me to get to yes.
And something else that's being worked on in these closing days of 2018 is another bill that would allow the legislature to defend itself if the Attorney General decides not to step in and do so. How would this kind of function in the real world?
So I think this is also a sound government practice, something that has been talked about for the last few years but never been acted on. And I'll be completely honest and transparent with you, Scott. If our newly elected Attorney General hadn't been so public, so routinely public about basically threatening that she would not support and not defend the legislature and its laws that it's put into place, it wouldn't have been such a hot topic issue. But
sure,
she has been very clear that she's just going to be very selective as to what she defends and what she doesn't. So all this does, it doesn't take anything away from an Attorney General. All it does is add to the legislature that they can, if necessary, have standing in court to defend laws that have been passed. So those who want to claim this is taking away powers of the Attorney General are absolutely wrong, but it does add the option for the legislature to defend itself in the event that an Attorney General decides that they don't want to.
And in reality, Senator, the legislature to defend itself means the legislature to defend Michigan citizens, because citizens are electing legislature who pass laws, and if the Attorney General says she's not going to, in this case, she's not going to defend those laws that have been duly passed by the legislature, there's an opportunity for now lawmakers to step in and protect citizens.
Correct. You summed it up better than I did. And those who want to critique this are just looking for something to critique.
Yeah. State Senator Mike Shirkey with us on Radio Free Hillsdale, 101.7 FM. I'm Scott Bertram. Wanted to end with some comments. I believe this might have happened the last day we talked, or the day after, and that was the news from General Motors about some of the layoffs and the factories that are scheduled to be closed. How does this impact the state of Michigan? What's happening kind of behind the scenes as this process continues?
So General Motors, Ford Motor Company, and all the other major manufacturers in the world, not just in America, they're under terrific pressure because of technology changes, both in the technology of the vehicles themselves and how people use vehicles. And it's no secret and no mystery that I think that we're heading in a direction where there'll be less vehicle ownership, in other words, less demand. And so their announcement on these plants was not a complete surprise to me. However, there's already been some conversation about other manufacturers being interested in those facilities for the production of products that they think they'd like to offer. So I think it's a little premature to critique General Motors. I do think there's some legitimate questions to ask with regards to the kind of the special tax favors they received when they went through the bailout. But those will be wrestled through, I'm sure. And then I also recently heard, I think you have too, that 90% of in particular the hourly workers will have an opportunity to find employment in other plants,
right?
Because the demand is there. Unfortunately, in some cases it would require relocation, but nonetheless, there's still that demand there. So it's discomforting, but it's a natural process of the economic cycle, and that's what happens in markets. And
yes.
So nobody should get too tied up in their underpants yet.
Yeah, and this is something that goes back to the bailouts, and something that the big automakers were criticized for was, just acting too slowly, not seeing what consumer tastes and what consumer desires were and reacting to them. This time, it seems that General Motors is taking that into account. What car buyers want, and these days it's not cars. It's largely crossovers and SUVs, and so making those adjustments. This is just a highly. There are so many pieces moving at the same time that it's difficult to sort of, from the outside, say this is absolutely right or absolutely wrong. There are people inside General Motors who have a much better idea about what their books look like and where the needs and wants of customers are.
In a very real way, Scott, we are victims of our own success because the United States is now the largest producer of oil because of technology advancements, right, which has kept a lid on the increase in fuel prices. We're enjoying $2.15 a gallon. I mean, gee whiz, that's nobody can argue with the fact that is really low comparatively.
Yep.
And that is what has caused the interest in SUVs and trucks and so forth. It wouldn't surprise me in the least if something happens in the future and gas prices sneak back up to $3 or $4, which I hope doesn't happen. And then all of a sudden, compact cars and other alternative vehicles will become popular. But you're right. We shouldn't critique companies that are making the best decisions they can, reading the tea leaves that are in front of them.
All right. State Senator Mike Shirkey. You can find him online, senatormikeshirkey.com. Head to Facebook. Find him there as well. Search for Senator Mike Shirkey, serving the 16th District, Branch, Hillsdale, and Jackson counties. Again, Senator, Merry Christmas to you and your family, and we look forward to talking once again in 2019.
Same to you, Scott. Have a great holiday season. Take care, buddy. Bye-bye.
That's State Senator Mike Shirkey, and I'm Scott Bertram. Find more of our conversations and interviews at our SoundCloud page, soundcloud.com/Radio Free Hillsdale, or head to radiofreehillsdale.com.